Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where we talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and/or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of the originals. So in this episode, we have the Michelsons traveling back to New Orleans because they need to be there so that Vincent can heal Hope. Which he does. He lessens the pain, but it does seem like there are still residual effects. This thing still got, its spell is still being enacted, and it's got a grip on her. We do learn this thing's name. It's called the Hollow, which immediately my, nerdy, dorky self just immediately thinks of Hollows from Bleach. But nevertheless, still no 100% concrete knowing what this thing is, aside from what we've already known that is something ancient. But essentially, this whole situation has led to everyone having to kind of put aside their situations and kind of working together. Obviously, Vincent and Marcel probably have their biggest reservations when it comes to the Michelsons, but it's like they have no choice but to work with them, especially when it came to Vincent and Elijah. Vincent's like, I don't want you around this whole situation. And then Elijah's like, well, basically you're dealing with another devil. It's like, and wouldn't you rather have a devil on your side? It's like kind of the devil you know versus the devil you don't know. And at least I am a devil that you're familiar with. You know what I do, so you know I'm not as dangerous as whatever the hell this hollow thing is. Because for him, he's willing to whatever it takes if it means saving his niece's life. Because, Vincent's like, oh, you don't give a crap about all these children, so stop pretending like you do. Elijah's never held anything against children. Granted, we really don't know. 1,000 years, there's no telling all the bad stuff he's done. Because as we know, some of the worst things he's ever done, he's kind of hidden and buried deep down inside of him. That was a big thing that kind of came out. Wasn't that last season that stuff started coming? Yeah, all the stuff he hid behind that red door in his mind. I don't remember if that was this season or was that season? Was that season 3 or was that season 2? Nevertheless, also having to work with Marcel. Obviously, he's trying to get the witches on his side, but the witches are like, no, screw you, Marcel. We don't trust you. But then, you had Haley being there to kind of speak to at least one of the particular witches, being like, hey, I'm a mother. One of my children is affected by this thing. So if you want to help out Marcel, at least help me out, one mother to another. And in this situation, we ended up finding out that it isn't just witches involved. Obviously, last episode, we also found out there's also humans involved because we found out about Will, which Vincent finds out about, which I'll kind of get to. But the fact is that it's also werewolves too, wolves as well, because I feel weird using the term werewolf because they're never really referred to as werewolves. They're just wolves. But nevertheless, there's one particular wolf. In this case, her name's Laura. So it seems like this thing isn't it's kind of... Granted, we don't know if vampires are on that list yet or not. The question hasn't popped up yet, but I'm kind of the fact is it's going after every other supernatural thing, witches, it's got werewolves, and now it's got humans. So it's got it's already got the trifecta. Why not make it a complete, square, the ultimate, representing everything that exists in this universe. So why not vampires? Like I said, there might be some vampires under its control that we just don't know about. And so it's something interesting really quickly I want to point out. I don't think many people know about the Michelsons' returns. Obviously, Marcel wants to keep it hush-hush. More so than anything, all the people that are enemies of Klaus, he wants to make it seem like everything's under control. Because if people know that Klaus is free, it's just going to cause rampaging. Probably people will look at Marcel as he doesn't have them under control anymore. He had Klaus, but Klaus got away. Fact is that Marcel doesn't have as much control as he liked to make us think, so people might come to challenge him, turning New Orleans into a war zone. So obviously he's going to keep that hush-hush. But the fact of the matter is, even in New Orleans, because there's very few people who probably knew about the Michelson situation that they weren't there anymore. But ultimately, I get the feeling because the fact is Haley presented herself here. And the fact is that some of the witches realized that Elijah's here. So it's how much has Marcel told the people of New Orleans? Yeah, the Michelsons are gone and they're never coming back? Or is everyone still under the assumption that Klaus is under his control? Because Klaus wasn't out in public a lot, so I'm sure he avoided a lot of people's eyes and everything. So that's something to think about. Yeah, and what's crazy about it is when you actually break down everyone's reasoning, that this thing is kind of basically giving everyone what they want. Because obviously Vincent ended up confronting Will about the fact is that he's being a part of this. And Will's the fact is there's this supernatural world out there. And there's so much evil here in New Orleans that needs to kind of be root it out. So he wants to work with this thing because it's like, it's going to give me everything I want. I don't know whether they 100% promised him Cammy back, but at the very least, it's like, I'll get rid of kind of, with my powers, you'll be able, and serving me, you'll be able to get rid of all the things that are here, like all the evil. So I don't know whether he's talking specifically vampires, or you're talking werewolves, just all things supernatural, or just particular vampires. Like, because vampires, out of all, I've said it before and I'll say it again, are the most destructive out of any, like, of the supernatural things, because like all this, like when you actually look at it, like Marcel's kind of the start of all of it, because even Haley was talking to that wolf Laura. The reason why she worked with the Hollow in the first place is because she wanted more power to take back New Orleans from Marcel. Marcel's like, I haven't done anything. She's like, this city isn't yours to rule. It belongs to everyone. Vampires, witches, as well as wolves. I did it again. We might not care for the vampires, but the fact is this is still all of our homes. But the fact is Marcel, even from the very beginning of the series, like Marcel had everyone on a short leash, especially the witches. People aren't allowed to do what they want to. Marcel's kind of taking control of it, especially over this past 5 years, because no one can stop him. The originals can't stop him, so I doubt there's no witches strong enough to stop him. Definitely no wolves strong enough to stop him. So that's what this has all been about. Like, every group has their own motives. Witches are probably doing it because they want to get back on top. Wolves are doing it because they want to possibly get back on top. It's more of an even divide, but even in that situation, it begs the question: if you get wolves who are stronger, there will always be someone that's power hungry, that's like, no, I deserve to be at the very top. I'm sure there are very few people who can honestly say we'll evenly divide it up, because Marcel keeps the peace, but even with keeping the peace, he's keeping himself on top. Vampires kind of have more reign of the territory anyway, so it's kind of like they have an unfair advantage. They're treated differently because he's a vampire himself. So I don't know. I've never really thought about that, but like I said, it applies throughout the entire series, but definitely probably even more so during this 5-year gap. And you even have Laura talking back to Haley, being like, the fact is you weren't here. The fact is you chose a Michelson over a pack. Like, a pack means nothing. You mean nothing to me. No matter who, even if you're one of the Crescent, like from the Crescent Moon pack, the fact of the matter is you weren't here. And so she's like, basically, this thing is going to come to our world. And she's like, she kills herself because she feels bad about the whole situation, because she wasn't planning on getting children involved. All she wanted was to get power. Same thing for Will. Will just wanted to kind of get rid of all this evil because this thing starts whispering in your head. And the way Vincent put it is basically this thing taps into the darkness in your heart, the stuff that you keep buried deep down inside that you don't want to show, that you don't ever want to let out. That's why he didn't want, more so the Michelsons in general, but especially Elijah. But I 100% applies to the Michelsons in general. He didn't want them close to this thing because it's like, there's a lot of darkness in them that this thing could easily warp and tap into. So obviously they ended up tracking down a lot of the people, and obviously ended up killing a lot of them. And sadly, it seems like it was all a trap because it wanted to lure the Michelsons there. It ends up using Marcel and Klaus, and they're trapped in a circle, and it's kind of talking to, because it's using them as an anchor of getting its foot in this world even more so. So I guess that's why specifically it chose her. Granted, Hope is super powerful too, so I don't think it's given up on her, but more so than anything, it knew if it tapped into Hope, it would definitely draw the Michelsons back to New Orleans, where it needs them to be. And then, like, Klaus tries to fight it because Hope had warned him, like, if you see a blue light, don't look at it. And he looks away, but Marcel is, like, completely enamored and looking at it. But there's moments where you see Klaus kind of look at it. Luckily, Vincent was able to find a way to break the spell without having to kill the children, because that was kind of the alternative. He wanted to find a different path, and he did. Sadly, through it all, Will ended up dying. But, is there a way to come back from this? Because for them, they thinking they're doing the right thing. Like, I think it's eaten so much of their soul away that it's not even like they don't have their soul anymore. For them, it's like, we're too far along to ever go back. So all the stuff I've done, because in Will's case, he's like, I can do this little bit of evil on my part, and I can get rid of this greater evil that's here in New Orleans, make it the place that it used to be. So it's sad that, Will had to meet that fate. And to me, and it's something that kind of went through my mind, the fact is that Klaus was there. It seemed like afterwards, when it was all said and done, it just seemed like, Klaus was kind of bummed about it, whether he'll admit it or not. Like, Elijah's like, oh, it was kind of a crappy day. And Klaus is like, yeah, it is one. Took a drink. Excuse me. I'm thinking the reason why he felt like that, because Vincent was telling him not to kill Will, but the fact is Klaus did it anyway because, it means saving his daughter. So much like Elijah, he'll do anything if it means saving Hope. But I think you see a moment where he didn't immediately kill Will. There was a little bit of time in between. I think he hesitated because Will is important. Like, he was someone that Cammy cared about, because that came up before, where like that was a situation before, but Cammy asked, if I could be remembering that wrong, but I could have sworn there was a moment where Klaus could have killed Will. I think it was because Lucian had gotten inside of his head, and Klaus was going to kill him, but Cammy told him not to. So he knows that he's someone that's important to Cammy. Plus, like, Klaus is trying to be the best version of himself because of that. And I think also because upon killing Will, he also killed other people too. And I think because the fact of the matter is, he's willing to kill people and hurt them for the sake of his daughter. But I think what eats at him is because he did it for his daughter. It's still that thing rolling back of his mind, like, maybe I shouldn't do this. Maybe, I'm setting a bad example. I want to be a different person for my daughter. But the fact is, I'm here killing like it's nothing. As who's to say I've really changed, and who's to say I won't end up making my daughter go down the same path. And it leads to an interesting conversation between Haley and Elijah too. Like, she asked Elijah, like, what would you have done to those children if, like, Vincent had found that loophole? He was like, I would have done whatever it takes. So that makes her, like, he was willing to kill those kids. I mean, the ends justify the means. It's like, it's for the right reasons, but at the same time, it's like, there is no right reason. There has to be another way. That basically, they have to be better than this. That they can't use their family as an excuse. We can't be putting our family above other people. And I guess that really cements it more for Haley. I mean, a lot, because this past 5 years, she's done nothing but put her family first, the Michelsons. And the fact is that she's done a lot of stuff that she regrets. And then, plus hearing what Laura said, it's like she wasn't there for their pack. And because she wasn't there to stick up for them, to kind of fight this whole situation with Marcel, to help them during that situation, because she was off helping the Michelsons, she wasn't there for them. And now there's one person, Laura, that's dead now because of this whole Hollow situation. She was so desperate, I'm sure not just her, but others were desperate enough to go to this day just because of the whole situation going down in New Orleans, kind of the whole power struggle. So that's kind of one more reason. It's like, we can't be, we need to set a better example. I need to, and everyone else needs to set a better example for Hope. We have to do better. We have to care about other people too, because not caring about other people is what led to a lot of things happening. Being so concerned about protecting our own family is the reason why Freya and Elijah did what they did to Davina, and which led Marcel to go down the path that he did, to betray them and become the monster that he is now, and that being the ultimate threat and enemy to them. So, like I said, just a continuous cycle that they have to break. But obviously, Vincent's like, basically, this isn't over. He's like, is it really done? And so now the question is, who did it go to? Did it go to Marcel? Did it go to Klaus? Obviously, Marcel looked at it the longest, so you're like, maybe it tapped into him, or maybe it went to Klaus, because Klaus is, technically stronger just because of what he is. He is older than Marcel, so maybe it could suck more energy from him. But then the fact is, Marcel is one of the strongest things around. So obviously, I don't know. It'll probably try and get a situation where it can get all of the Michelsons together so they can drain from them. Because what we saw was Hope had a dream that she ended up walking, and her dad, Klaus, turns around and he's got blue eyes. And it's like, she's like, it's here. So did it choose him? But in the bar, you had Marcel walking up to the mirror, and in a glass that's cracked, which I thought was a pretty awesome effect. It starts taking on the form of a snake eating its own tail. And I was like, dude, that's so... I'm very curious, is that what this thing looks like? Is it like a snake, or is it just supposed to be the representation of the fact is that it slithers and, strangles its victims? It's kind of another weird way, another metaphorical sense of what this thing does. It comes to someone, it gets inside of them, it strangles them until they submit to be eaten by it, type of thing. I don't know. Like I said, I'm probably adding too much going up and beyond what I need to when describing that whole situation. I know, just ignore me. So that is the question. Is Hope's dream coming true? Did it go inside of Klaus, or is it just saying that is that dream supposed to represent the fact is that it did to a certain extent? It doesn't have full control of Klaus, but it's wormed its way into his heart, and that it's going to find its way to him. Is what I'm also wondering too. So. Or maybe that just, it's not in him at all. Because like I said, he did kind of not look at it, but then there was a moment where you do see his eyes open, because before he was closing his eyes, it's telling Marcel to look away. So, but there was a moment his eyes open. So was that enough for it to get to him? Or did he never actually directly look at it? Was his eyes open, but he wasn't directly looking at it? Is it they have plans to take him? Because obviously Vincent's kind of in the middle of this thing's plan. It's taking an interest in him, because Vincent's still, taking all of this responsibility, because he's like, I brought this here first. So basically, every death that's happened is on him. I mean, luckily the children were able to be brought back home and everything, but they're still, I'm curious to see what those other people were. Were they witches? Were they humans? What were the case? All those other people that were killed. Cause Will did have like a medallion that gave him a lot of power, enough to like knock a lot of people, like even someone like Elijah and them back. So this thing is definitely very powerful. And the fact is that it can give such like powers to like just even regular humans. So, and now that I think about it, like, cause Cammy's family had that whole like treasure trove of like dark artifacts and stuff like that. I don't remember whatever happened to that after. I get the feeling like all that went to Vincent after she died, didn't it? I get the feeling that was the case. I don't remember. Obviously, it's been a while since I've seen season 3, but I think that's what happened. It all went to Vincent. I feel like she had to bestow it upon someone. I mean, out of anyone, it makes sense for Vincent, but because I was trying to remember like whether, because I remember in season 3 she used some of it. So, you know, during the whole like Aurora situation. So another thing I find interesting in this episode is like kind of, it seems like a relationship that's kind of building. It's Freya and what's her name, Kian, the werewolf lady. Like it seems like there's something building there. The fact is, I mean, I'm curious, like it is crossing my mind, is there something there? She hasn't been with anyone since she came back, so I was like, is there like something there, or is that just kind of like a friendship thing? I mean, I don't know. I'm like, if that's the case, I'm like, that's kind of interesting, because I mean, for me, that would be a very interesting, like, because it already seems like their relationship is changing a little bit, just because it's like, well, at the beginning it's like you were nothing more than a means to an end to save my family, but now it's like, okay, I'm giving you a little more leeway, I'm giving you a ring that basically soups you up and gives you a lot more control over your werewolf powers. At first, it was meant to kind of keep her on a quote unquote leash, but obviously she lets up a little bit later on. Yeah, because obviously this is all about protecting her family, but that's even something I feel like even Freya's kind of reflecting back on too, kind of like, should I really go to such extremes? Because the fact is that Kian has done what she was. I feel like I'm mispronouncing her name. I remember I wrote it down in my notes, and I think I'm reading it how I wrote it in my notes. So I keep feeling like I'm mispronouncing it because I keep letting it slip out of my mind how you say her name. Like I went through the trouble of writing it down, but you know who I'm talking about. At the very least, you know what I'm talking about. I'm sorry, I'm such a dumb, like big dummy like that. So. But she lessened the ring so that it's like, oh, you get all the benefits, but you're not bound by it. So it's like she's even in the playing fields a little bit. So that just makes me wonder. It's like, I don't know, especially the way she acts around her too. She's a little, I don't know, she's not the normal Freya. Like it was just kind of like, huh? Like that seems like a little bit of like your, like a little bit of happiness is shining through. So it's like, is that a thing or not? Like I say, because I'm only bringing it up because I didn't even think, I've never thought about it till now. It's like, never actually seen Freya get close to anybody, because we've seen the rest of the Michaelsons have their respective relationships and stuff like that, but like Freya's the only one that stayed single. I mean, I guess as big sis Freya, she kind of has to look over all her little siblings to be like, yo, keep them in line and everything. So obviously the big sister role kind of takes precedence amongst everything else, because subsequently since returning, all she's done is to look after her siblings and try to make sure that everything, you know, they're good. So, but that their particular situation does lead to the fact is that Marcel is still in a position to be, you know, taken out, especially if they do what they need to do, like turn this into a more science experiment. I'm very curious to see like what her role, Kian's like role is going to be going forward. Like, you know, besides just helping Freya with this whole situation. I hope it's not a situation where it's like, oh yeah, she seems like she's willingly helping you because she's actually been possessed by the Hollow this entire time and just been planning to get close, like, to the Michaelsons by, like, because, like, you know, because the rest of the Michaelsons don't even know what Freya's up to, mainly, once again, playing the big sis role of doing stuff, especially because Marcel is kind of, the family's kind of like, when it comes to Marcel, because even Haley, she doesn't hate Marcel. She understands why he's done a lot of the stuff that she's done. She's even been like, hey, we're leaving Marcel. The fact of the matter is, I hope that you're happy. Like, the fact is that you finally have the city yours again. I hope it makes you happy. And it's to the point, I don't think Marcel is really happy, because I'm sure there are a lot of things going through his mind, especially all the stuff Klaus has said is like, oh, the fact of the matter is, you're just trying to copy me. You just want to try and be a better me. Because Klaus has learned too. He's like, the fact is, you think I haven't learned in these 5 years? I have. Because he even tells Hope, it's like, because Hope is like, mommy told me that you love New Orleans. And he's like, yeah, I did once upon a time. But I learned that you shouldn't hold on to places. What you should do is hold people in your heart. Fill your heart with all the people that mean a lot to you. That's what's really important. So, like I said, it's so interesting because we've never seen, like, it's interesting seeing Klaus play that dad role. I really appreciate that being an angle of this season because obviously we saw him take care of Hope, but it's like he never held on to Hope for a very long time because every other time it's like Hope was kind of had to be, taken away from him. He had to be separated from her, which he was separated from her again over these 5 years. But the fact is, he's there playing the role of a father. So you just hope that in these regards, at least everything works out for him at the very least, that he can be the father that she can be proud of, that the father that he can be proud of being. And what will it, like I said, I was bringing up earlier, the point I was trying to get to is like, what does this mean for Marcel? Because if they do rid him of his powers, that might put them in a disadvantage going up against this thing. Granted, they don't want to have to worry about Marcel being a threat in the future. So it's like, because who's to say once this whole Hollow situation is dealt with, that, Marcel's still going to be a threat too. So there's just so many angles. Obviously, just there's no way we're done with the whole everyone wanting Klaus's head situation. That's a situation that the Michelson family is always going to have to deal with. But I'm sure that's going to rear its ugly head in this season soon, and will continue to rear its ugly head throughout the seasons. Because the Michelsons could never just deal with one threat at a time. There always has to be attacks on multiple fronts. So, hence how the whole Tristan, Aurora, and Lucian situation happened last season. So. But overall, a very, very good episode, and I'm very excited to see where the next episode takes us. But really, that's all I want to talk about in this episode. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.